The seasons of the year come and go in seamless rhythm. Winter becomes spring in the melting of ice. Spring turns to summer in the waxing of the moon. Summer fades to autumn in the ebbing of tides. In 5 places around the globe, the changing seasons set a stage on which extraordinary landscapes and magnificent wildlife interact to reveal the splendors of nature. The end of the monsoon heralds autumn in the jungles of India, where the hunters emerge from the shadows. Winter signals the triumph of spirit over the bitter cold of the Japanese Alps. Spring triggers the rebirth of the coral reef off Australia's tropical shores. Summer comes to life as caribou migrate towards Alaska's northern slope. And the yearly drought is eased by the silver waters of Africa's Zambezi River, lifeblood of the veldt. In each of these places, the cycle of the seasons takes a dramatic pause, then ushers in a moment of nature's true splendor. In most of the world, autumn is seen as the waning of the year, the season of crisp days and cool nights, the season when forests ignite in splendid color. In India, autumn signals the end of the monsoon rains, a season painted in words by the 6th century Indian poet Subandhu.
By and by, the rainy season yielded to autumn, the season of bright dawns, of parrots rummaging among rice stalks, of fugitive clouds. In autumn, the lakes echoed with the sounds of herons.
But autumn is also the season of the tiger, largest of all the cats. 6 feet of muscle, 500 pounds of sheer power. Only the tiger can reveal the true splendor of the jungles of India. Some of the last wild tigers on Earth live in Ranthambore National Park in the western state of Rajasthan, between the great Indian desert to the west and the Ganges River to the east. The park lies below the ruins of a 1,000-year-old fort on grounds that were once the private hunting reserve of the Maharajas of Jaipur. But the original hunters here were the tigers. Since time immemorial, they have been the enforcers of life and death in the jungle, relying on silence and stealth, but most of all, on the cover of night. Traditionally, tigers have been so secretive in the wild that they were presumed to be entirely nocturnal hunters. In India, this shadowy power was held in high spiritual esteem. Tiger expert Valmik Thapar has spent the last 20 years studying the wild cats and their cultural impact on the people of his country.
The tiger was worshipped as a god by all forest communities in India. It was the guardian of the forest, the guardian of the tree. It was the essence of all life.
Today, the great cats have become his passion and his crusade.
The work that I do to save this species has become more and more complicated, very intense and very interesting for myself. There was a time in my life where I was anonymous and quietly looking and following tigers endlessly, and it was a world which I will never forget. It's etched in my memory as the most pleasurable moments of my life, because there were times without fear. Neither did I have the fear, neither did the tiger have the fear.
These moments without fear were in the years following 1972, when the Indian government implemented a visionary conservation program called Project Tiger to save the wild cats from centuries of sport hunting. Special tiger preserves were created, the last bastions on Earth for wild tigers, including Ranthambore National Park. Valmik was one of the first to study the tigers of Ranthambore, studies which revealed a startling change in the wild cats. That as the tigers began to feel safe within the boundaries of the national park, a different behavior emerged. In the cool days of autumn, they were beginning to venture out of the darkness to hunt in the daylight. For the first time, Valmik was able to witness the moment of attack. The explosion of speed and awesome strength. Yet despite their power, the tiger's successes are few and far between. 4 out of 5 attacks fail, and the cats frequently go for a week or more between kills. To survive, the cats must both outwit and outrun prey that are fleet and constantly wary. One of their primary prey species in Ranthambore are sambar deer. More than 2,000 live in the park, gathering in small family groups consisting of several females, their young, and 1 adult male. At the first sign of tigers, they give a characteristic alarm call that alerts the whole jungle.
You see, finding tigers for me was always with the language of the forest. It comes from alarm calls of spotted deers, of monkeys, of sambar deer, of peacocks. And on hearing this call, in those days, I would just rush into the jeep and push off in the hope that something would be happening. My personal memories of tigers are endless, but probably the most amazing was a tiger called Jengiz, who was a male tiger who roamed Ranthambore for 1 season only. But he was a master of killing in the water. He would race across the lake bed through the water and attack sambar deer, and he did this in such perfection that it was to be emulated by the resident tigress, who never used to do this water activity. And I think this was again unique in the documentation of tiger behavior to show the remarkable intelligence of this animal.
Never before had such scenes been witnessed. Then, just as the big cats began to relinquish the secrets of their lives, Valmik noticed a frightening change.
Then something happens, and you search in your soul for an explanation. Why do tigers go missing? You find excuses because you believe the tiger is not going to be killed again, not after all the slaughter it's experienced.
Incredibly, despite all the conservation efforts, India's tigers were disappearing again. Their bones smuggled across the Himalayas into China as folk cures and aphrodisiacs. The cost, 500 dead tigers a year.
The solution to the tiger problem is only one united strategy. This strategy has to come from the entire world community. The tiger is the magic of nature's creation on this planet. An animal which is in the minds of every child who grows up on this planet. It evokes the imagery of magic, of nature, of the natural balance, so vital for human survival. We have to act now. There is not a moment, a second to lose. It can only be saved if the world unites in this effort.
This moment is critical to the future of India's tigers. If the cats can't be saved here, one of their last bastions on Earth, they may not survive. Today, as the days of the tiger shorten and wane towards winter, the cats retreat into the shadows. Here, below the ruins of 1,000 years of human history, they await the world's attention. Winter. The season of cold. Test of endurance. Even time seems to freeze. Around the world, the scale of life is diminished. Most living things are gone, deep underground, or dormant, or simply somewhere warmer. One of the harshest winters on Earth occurs in the Shiga Heights in northern Japan. Deep snows veil the mountains. Trees strike through the sky like bolts of black lightning. Yet there are survivors here, the messengers of the mountains, hardy spirits who ply the snows with an unseasonable cheerfulness. They are Japanese macaques, or snow monkeys, the only monkeys on Earth who live in the cold northern mountains. They are energetic bundles of curiosity and intelligence, who transform a grueling winter into a splendor of survival. The Shiga Heights lie in the mountains north of Tokyo, known as the Japanese Alps, a region of earthquakes and eruptions, known as Jigoku-dani, or Hell Valley. The snow monkeys are only recent arrivals here. For most of the past million years, they inhabited the warmer lowland forests of the Japanese islands. Over the course of centuries, human settlement drove the monkeys into the cold uplands, where they were forced to pioneer a new lifestyle. The task was not an easy one. Winter here is a 4-month trial of deep snows and sub-zero temperatures. By December, the monkeys are reduced to stripping the bark from twigs, scratching for roots, scavenging the last of autumn's freeze-dried berries. Each day is a struggle to forage enough calories to survive. Sogohara, founder of Jigogudani Park, was one of the first to study the macaques during winter.
During the winter, the behavioral pattern of the monkeys is a little different from the other seasons. Their migration areas become narrower. Because the snow becomes their obstacle, they can't go very far. They just move within an area of 2 to 3 square kilometers.
But one day, the monkeys discovered a new way to withstand the rigors of the season. It might have been an accident, or a single act of adventure. Whatever it was, it transformed winter for the snow monkeys of Hell Valley into a season of warmth and social relaxation. Mothers bring their smallest infants into the water with them. Old monkeys ease tired bones in the mineral warmth. For the youngsters, the pools are playgrounds where they enjoy every game of watery fun known to human children. Yet the hot springs are more than just fun. They are also a place for the monkeys to practice their social skills. By constantly grooming one another, they reinforce the vital ties that help bond them into a single troop.
I don't know why the monkeys went into the hot spring. There are many hot springs alongside the river. They may have been bathing in those spots even before we came here. Monkeys swim in summer. They don't have fear of water. When they see hot water in the winter, naturally, they want to stick their arms and legs into it. And they may want to submerge their entire body. That may be how they learn that bathing in the hot spring is comfortable.
For many Japanese, the adventurous spirit of the monkeys awards them a special place in the animal world. Particularly for the followers of Shintoism, a traditional Japanese form of nature worship which holds snow monkeys in high esteem. Each year, thousands of Japanese pilgrims travel to Hiyoshi Shrine on Mount Hiei near Kyoto, where Shinto priests make offerings on their behalf. Wild monkeys, they believe, will act as messengers between the priests and the spirits of the mountain. Images of monkeys also fill the beautiful medieval architecture of Japan, including the 3 wise monkeys who see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil. Guardian monkeys protect temples and imperial palaces. Snow monkeys populate traditional Japanese art. They became a favorite subject of Maurice Hausen, a 19th century painter. For years, he lived in isolation in the mountains in order to study the monkeys. His paintings were so lifelike that his contemporaries accused him of having monkeys for ancestors. In his 30 years of watching the macaques, Sugihara has found many incidents that illustrate the similarities between people and monkeys.
Last year, an infant monkey lost his mother in an accident right after his birth. He was still breastfeeding at the time. I was very curious to see how that child would grow along, to see if he could survive. By watching him, I realized the importance of having a family among the monkeys. Even if an infant monkey doesn't have its mother, its grandmother will take care of it. It's been a year, and he seems to be healthy. Lately, human families are declining, and watching monkeys makes me think that we have to rethink the importance of family.
As the sun drops behind the mountains and the temperatures fall, the monkeys reluctantly abandon the springs. They gather themselves to begin the trek up the snowy trails to their nests in the treetops. As darkness falls, the monkeys bask in the lingering heat from the springs, a life-giving warmth that will carry them through the cold winter night. Spring. Season of sunlight, warmth, hope. Throughout the world, spring is characterized by rebirth, by new leaves, new shoots, new growth. But in the shimmering realm underwater, something different happens. Here, the splendor of spring plays itself out as a dance between the waves, the moon, and the creatures of the sea. Nowhere is this better seen than on Australia's Great Barrier Reef, largest coral reef in the world, largest structure built by any living thing, visible from as far away as the moon. Some have called it the world's largest living creature, but in fact, it's a multitude of mysterious creatures. Animals that look like plants, fish that fly like butterflies, sea turtles that fly, and snakes that breathe air yet live deep underwater. Each spring, as the days lengthen and the sunlight grows stronger, these animals of the coral reef renew themselves in ways as old as the sea itself. The Great Barrier Reef lies in the crystal clear waters off northeastern Australia. Here, hundreds of small reefs combine to make up the 1,000 miles of the Great Barrier Reef. The Coral Sea provides such perfect conditions for corals, warm, salty, sunlit waters, that even a small reef can support more species of coral than are found in the entire Atlantic Ocean. Each reef is built by the ceaseless efforts of delicate creatures no bigger than a baby's finger. Billions of individual coral polyps living together in massive colonies of related animals. So closely attuned, they function together. The colony behaves as a single organism. Year after year, millennia after millennia, these colonies have built their limestone homes, one on top of each other. Their efforts now stretch 1,000 miles long and hundreds of feet high. Throughout this monumental reef, hundreds of different species of corals have evolved into strange and wonderful forms. Hard corals thrive in the violent surf of the outer reef. Branching corals and soft corals flourish in the quieter waters of the lagoon. Each coral is part of the wonderland of flowering architecture that provides home, food, and shelter for thousands of species of tropical fish and invertebrates. Anemones, the beautiful, flower-like animals with an arsenal of stinging tentacles, take root on the exposed walls of the coral reef. Here, bathed by the tides, they feast on a broth of plankton. Living within them are anemone fish. These colorful creatures are not born immune to the tentacles, but must allow themselves to be stung little by little until the toxins no longer harm them. Each spring, as the days lengthen and the seawater grows warmer, pairs of anemone fish who mate for life prepare to lay their eggs inside the poisonous nest of their host anemone. Here the males will faithfully tend their clutch of eggs until the fry hatch and swim away. For the black and white damselfish, spring brings on added parental duties. These fish not only energetically defend their eggs, but also their young, herding them to safety, driving off predators. Throughout the reef, spring evokes new energy and new life. The sinuous mating dance of the pipefish takes place at sunset, as traditional roles are reversed, and the female deposits her eggs inside the male, who will carry them to term and give birth to live young. But of all the rites of spring on the coral reef, none is more fantastic than the one night each year when the corals reproduce themselves in a spectacular show, unseen by human eyes until only recently. As darkness falls, the filter feeders of the ocean converge on the reef, awaiting a bonanza of food. Manta rays, 60-foot-long whale sharks, eagle rays, a spring night, a full moon. The sea bathed in silvery light. The tides gentle enough to calm the waters. It begins like any other night. Parrotfish weave themselves to sleep inside protective cocoons. Moray eels come out of caves to cruise the reef. Cuttlefish fin in and out of staghorn corals. But on this one spring night, something magical happens. In perfect natural symmetry, one after another, Hundreds of species of corals, trillions of individual animals, spawning simultaneously, create an explosion of life without parallel in the animal world. One by one, the corals release their eggs and their sperm. Together they float in the warm waters, a veritable blizzard of newly born coral larvae. In the spring days following the spawning, billions of these new coral larvae disperse across the sea to begin building their own homes, and with them, a new coral reef, which will provide food, shelter, and spawning sites for all the other wondrous inhabitants of the coral world. And the new reef will grow, as others have, for 500 million years, becoming one more link in the shimmering chain of life that is Australia's Great Barrier Reef. Summer. The season of bounty, of warmth and promise, the season when living things grow, multiply, and mature. One of the most extraordinary summers on Earth occurs on the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in far northern Alaska. Here, the splendor of summer literally bursts from the ice, fueled by a sun that burns 24 hours a day. The pace of growth here is astonishing. New flowers, young birds, and perhaps the most amazing of all, a herd that doubles its size overnight, played out on the vast plain of the Alaskan tundra. The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge lies on the coastal plain of northern Alaska, more than 100 miles above the Arctic Circle. Its 18 million acres of cold solitude are protected by the frozen reaches of the Beaufort Sea and guarded by the mighty Brooks Range, northernmost mountain range in the world. This is North America's last great wilderness, a landscape pounded into place by storms and glaciers, and the constant movement of life. For millennia, this land has been vital to the survival of the 150,000 caribou, known as the porcupine herd, named for a major river in their range. Caribou are the deer of the north, herd animals that migrate together by the tens of thousands. The oldest deer species living, and the only one where both the males and the females still grow antlers. Each year, the porcupine herd makes one of the greatest of all land migrations. More than 1,000 miles through dense forests, across rivers, and over mountain ranges. Battling cold, hunger, deep snows, under constant threat from wolves. Their goal, the tundra at the far edge of the continent, where each caribou in the herd was born, and where all return to deliver their own young. On the tundra, even in summer, ice lies just inches below the surface of the earth. No trees can grow here. Yet this is surprisingly fertile landscape, dense with the shrubs and lichens which fatten the caribou. And it is these vast expanses which provide the safety of an open horizon. Here, in a miracle of natural timing, the females give birth, synchronizing their labor so that most deliver their calves within a few days of each other. The crop of new caribou is so enormous that it overwhelms the appetites of even the hungriest predators. This female grizzly, ravenous after months of hibernation, will try her best to feed her own young on caribou calves. Like all grizzlies, she is a determined meat eater in the summer, pushed by a season that allots her only a few months to triple her weight before the onset of the next winter and the next long hibernation. The calving of the caribou is an annual bonanza. In some years, as many as half the summer's calves will fall, fuel for the bears who eat up to 90 pounds a day. Yet, although this grizzly is capable of enormous bursts of speed and strength, even a young caribou can counter with an awesome arsenal of defenses: agility, stamina, and the safety of the herd. The newborns, within minutes of birth, are on their feet. Within hours, they're on the move. Within days, they are sure-footed enough to jog ahead with the herd, grazing on the hoof, stopping only to nurse. Evolution has honed the caribou's trekking skills, awarding them broad, rounded feet that support them on snow as well as on the boggy tundra. Their outer coat hairs are hollow, making caribou so buoyant that they literally bob across Alaska's rushing rivers. River crossings are among the most dangerous of all activities for the young calves. Glacial meltwater is frigid, just above the freezing point. The currents are treacherous. The riverbanks are icy. Yet even with these formidable obstacles, the calves cannot afford to fall behind their mothers, where they may become lost in the confusion of the herd. thousands of years, the Native Americans of the North Coast, the Gwich'in, have migrated alongside the caribou, crossing the Bering Land Bridge during the last ice age, tracking caribou through winter forests and up onto the tundra every summer. Today, Gwich'in, like Sarah James, live all year round in Arctic Village, on the edge of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
The Gwich'in people are caribou people. If it weren't for caribou, we would never have survived.
Gwich'in legend says that long ago caribou and people were the same, and that even today every Gwich'in retains a small piece of the caribou's heart. Gwich'in language contains 17 different words for caribou. Today, as in the past, most of their traditional food, clothing and lifestyle is closely tied to the movements of the herd.
The Gwich'in people have a tradition that we don't shoot the first herd of caribou that comes through our camp, because it's usually a female caribou that leads the whole herd, and we think that she has the most wisdom and knows the migration path. If we shoot her, then all the others will be lost, and then the herd will have to turn back to reorganize again.
Even today, caribou provide villagers like Rose Lee the means to survive this far northern winter.
The Gwich'in people depend on the caribou for all our meals, clothing, and income. The caribou skins we use for parkas, pants, mitts, and boots. The legs we use for leg skin boots, or purse, or dog backpack, or for food storage. The significance of the caribou to the Gwich'in people is that it's our whole life.
The caribou still live their lives here as they have for thousands of years. The calves grow larger and stronger as the summer progresses. Here on the refuge, the calves discover the behaviors that will serve them in adult life, the sparring that prepares young males for later mating contests. Here they develop the stamina that prepares them for their own first migration, the long trek back to the south. By August, the midnight sun is dimming. The rivers are growing thin skins of ice. As the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge takes its first dusting of snow, the herd becomes restless. Until one early autumn day, it sets off, leaving the tundra behind until next summer. Although most of the globe experiences the slow passage of the 4 seasons, some lands have only 2. The wet, time of cloudbursts and downpours, and the dry, season of drought. One of the harshest of all dry seasons occurs in the uplands of southern Africa. For 5 months, no rain falls. The earth ages visibly, burnt by the sun, cracked by the winds. The air seared clean of clouds. All living things are stretched to the limits of survival. Water becomes the great equalizer, humbling everything before it. But there is one oasis in this landscape of drought, the Zambezi River. A thin ribbon of life that carries water from the rainforests in the heart of Africa to the parched veldts of Zimbabwe and Zambia. The first European to set foot here was the Scottish explorer and missionary Dr. David Livingstone. He spent 30 years traveling Africa on behalf of the London Missionary Society, part of his efforts to bring Christianity to the continent. Livingstone was driven by an almost fanatical desire to end the African slave trade. He believed that if he could find a river to the sea that he could navigate, he could foster a trade of natural resources, not slaves, for the people of Africa. His greatest hope was the Zambezi, broad, gentle, perhaps 1,000 miles long. He'd also heard, and dismissed as unimportant, rumors of a great set of waterfalls at the river's midpoint. When he finally laid eyes upon them in November 1855, his skepticism gave way to wonder.
The falls are singularly formed. They are simply the whole mass of the Zambezi waters rushing into a fissure or rent made right across the bed of the river. Never before seen by European eyes, but seen so lovely, must have been gazed upon by angels in their flight.
At 328 feet, clearly these falls were among the highest yet discovered, twice the height of Niagara, and more than 1.5 times its width. They stretched nearly a mile into the far distance, facing a precipitous chasm. Livingstone was so inspired by the splendor of the waterfalls that he named them after his queen, Victoria. But their African name best echoes the poetry of the place. Mose Yoa Tunya, the smoke that thunders. Smoke from 10 million cubic feet of water a minute, shooting over the brink, sending mist 1,500 feet into the air. Mist which during the season of drought becomes the lifeblood of a rainforest across the gorge. A dense tropical tangle of trees and vines that supports an explosion of plant and animal species. Birds, vervet monkeys, water bugs. Water is an intimate force here, sliding off the green skin of leaves, massaging its way between feathers, fingering the still surface of puddles. In the rainforest, mist is transformed, drop by drop, into the essence of life. Birds, which are scarce in the miles of dry savannas nearby, abound in this wet world. Bee-eaters, kingfishers, bulbuls, rollers, barbets. Below the falls, the Zambezi changes its nature, carving its way through a tortuous gorge of white water and whirlpools. Livingston ran these rapids in a wooden canoe, surviving the dangers of hidden rocks and capsizing. Beyond the gorges lies yet another river,